Good afternoon, everybody. This is Hunter Mozingo bringing you your daily market insight video for Monday, August 9th. It is a few minutes after market close here, approximately 4:04 p.m. Eastern Time here in Jacksonville, Florida. And in today's edition of the market insight video, we're going to talk about how to avoid death by a million indicators. In addition to that, we're also going to look at some buys and sells we made today. We added to some leading stocks. We want to focus on leading stocks that are leading, especially in muted days in the market. So we're going to look at those charts here in a moment, as well as some other winners and losers from the day. But before we do that, let's talk about what just happened. Indices flat, leaders show strength beneath the surface. Like I mentioned, leaders are leading. The S&P down about 0.1% today. The Q's up about 0.5%. Dow Jones down 0.3%. Mid caps down 0.28. Russell 2000 down 0.58%. The market state remains in an uptrend with SML highlighted there in red, and that is because small caps are still struggling with the 50-day. Mid caps kind of sitting slightly above their moving averages, but small caps still a little bit of a laggard here. Market trend, or the Grotection gauge on the right side of your screen there. No changes from Don's last videos. Market leaders remains bullish with that little black arrow pointing both directions there. Short and medium term both still have that small yellow arrow pointing towards neutral, and that is for small caps still struggling with those shorter term moving averages. Long term, we are still intact as all major indices are above their 200-day moving average. So before we get to the charts, this is the team here at Revere. As always, I tell you guys, just reach out to me if you have any questions. You can email me if you do have anything that you want to ask me about from this video or from the podcast or just in general about Revere. I'm happy to answer those questions. If not, you can reach out to any of these fellas here or Maral, as she's now listed on the website, if you have questions as well. So that's Dan, Tim, Maral, Alex, or Don at revereasset.com. So let's get to the charts. We're going to start with the indices here. The S&P 500 first. You can see I've got TLT on the screen. We're going to get to that in just a moment here. But S&P really just very tight today. I'll show you guys a 5-minute so you can see. Not extremely volatile, pretty much between 441.50 and 442.50 on the SPY here. Only about 1% above the 21 EMA, 2.5, 2.8 above the 50. So not very extended, although we are pushing all-time highs. We're not, having a runaway type of rally where the markets or the indices get very extended. QQQ, the leader today, holding up against the 8 EMA, as you can see there. That's the pink line here. 1.5% above the 21, 4% above the 50. Also not incredibly extended here. So really about as good of action as you could have asked for on a day like today for the most part. The Dow holding up right there at that 350 level. That's where I would watch for support now, which is also where your 8-day exponential is, and just kind of sitting right there slightly above 350. And then mid caps, I mentioned, sitting right above all their moving averages. You can see 50, 21, and the 8 are all right on top of each other more or less, and MDY is within 1% of all of those. And lastly, IWM butted its head up against the 50-day on Friday, couldn't quite get above it, did stay above the 21 and the 8, which is a positive. Small caps adversely affected by oil and gas being a laggard today for sure. So death by a million indicators, and this really isn't some, I've got some great solution or this one indicator you should focus on. It's really as simple as things don't always make sense. And the reason I wanted to discuss this today is because look at TLT today, right? TLT has had a bad reversal down, right? So this is indicative of bond prices falling, which inversely is going to mean that TNX, I apologize, TNX here is rising. So you can see the TNX is rising and see that TLT, so rates are rising, bond prices falling. Under normal circumstances, you would think, okay, well, that's good for banks and the more value or expansionary type of plays, and that's not great for growth. Well, what happens is you start to look under the hood, and believe it or not, I mean, ARKK is green on a day like today where the S&P was red and the NASDAQ was flat. IPO, the new IPO, new merchandise ETF, up 2% today, a leader on the day. So growth stocks not necessarily being adversely impacted by the move in interest rates. Well, what about banks? They should have benefited, shouldn't they? KRE is down today, actually closed below the 50. KBE down today, closed right on the 50. A lot of those stocks that had good moves last week didn't really do much today. SIVB flat. So the point is, whether it's the 10-year yield, or the yield curve, or the NASI, or the put call ratio, or the fear greed index, just using one in isolation does not have to dictate your decision making. It's really, these are all little pieces of information to gather to aid in your decision making, so that you know where the fear greed and the put call and what interest rates are doing at a given point in time. But these aren't indicators to, for example, if you saw TLT break the 21 and you thought, I had to sell growth stocks, I got to get out of growth stocks. Well, you're hurting today, because there's some growth stocks that had some great performance today, and some leading growth stocks that acted really well. So every indicator does not always make sense. Every correlation does not always explain a certain move in one security or another. These are just pieces of ancillary information to take into your consideration for your decision making as an investor and a trader. So with that being said, let's look at some leading stocks here. Net up 4% today after earnings, came down and touched the 21, was down like 4 or 5% after hours here on August 6th. Came back, closed right on the 8, and above average volume, up 4%, new all-time highs. Absolute monster of a leading stock. We actually added to Net today in Grotection to bring it up to our biggest position, along with Square. Both of these were added to slightly today. Square with another bounce off the 8, sitting right here at this 280 level. I would keep a very close eye on these highs here, 286, as well as this 290 high pretty much here, 289.23. But Square, another leading stock with above average volume, showing strength on a day where the indices are not really doing much. So let's look at a few more of those names. STLD, which we bought last week for Grotection, up 2.5% today. XME was one of the value plays that kind of bucked the trend. That was actually pretty strong today, particularly steel. Nucor, a little bit stronger than STLD today, up 3.5%, 3.35. Datadog, not a leader today, and they did undercut this gap low here. But the important thing with Datadog is it closed at the top of the range, got back to that 130 level, and really was just getting bought up all day long. And you'll see here, every small little dip being bought, closing at the top of the range. So nothing really concerning about that Datadog action there, with the exception of you would have liked to see it hold this 126.33 low. Also, Goldman Sachs, one of the few banks that did show strength, but really faded at the end of the day. But it did get to that 400 level, did get to new highs. Tesla up about 2% or so today, continuing its action, bouncing off the 8. That looks like really good action from Tesla there. Snapchat, another one that's holding on to the 8-day exponential, up about 2.5%, 3% today. I'd keep a really close eye on that 79 level. Again, that's an actionable level. And you can see this is the pivot. Here's 20% up here. Keep an eye on that 79 level and what Snap can do up in the 80s. Also, Upstart, a former leader, starting to show some signs of life. Earnings upcoming, but they are getting back above these moving averages as they coil here. And a few more winners for the day: RH and FND, Floor and Decor, both having really strong days here. These have been stronger stocks. These aren't necessarily materials, but these are building products, furniture, things for your home. Floor and Decor is obviously floor and decor. RH is a lot of luxury furniture and things of that nature. But these have been showing some strength ahead of the pack, as well as the home builders and the steel stocks. So some groups to keep your eyes on there. BNTX, BioNTech, Moderna, Novavax, both having absolutely unreal runs here. BNTX up 15%. I believe Moderna was close to the same, up 17%. Novavax was also up big today. So the vaccine stocks just absolutely going bonkers. And then you've got cryptocurrency also having a good day today. GBTC up 7%. Coin, which is Coinbase, up 9% today. So some really strong action from cryptocurrency. The stocks that benefit from those, your Riot Blockchain, MicroStrategy, Coinbase, Silvergate, those types of names also benefiting today as they normally do. However, you also had some areas that were weak. So XOP continues to not really be able to get much going, unlike the steel area. And it is important to note, oil and gas, one of the last sectors to peak. You can see here, oil and gas peaking pretty much on July 1st, XME peaking pretty much on June 11th. So metals and mining, particularly steel, peaked before that. This is steel, it looks like pretty much peaked back in May. This is the steel ETF. So oil and gas can't seem to get it going. Neither can silver miners or gold miners. I mean, just probing their lows here for GDX and SIL. We did trim some of Zoom Info today. So really weird scenario, nothing wrong with this per se. But Zoom Info has had 2 secondary offerings come out in the last 4 days, which is really weird. You see that sometimes when a stock has a huge move up, but not too necessarily that close. So when it was down to about 60, we took about half of this position off here. And last position, we sold Roku today. We had bought it as it got back above the 400 level here, back above the 50-day. The following day, it undercut that level, undercut the 50, undercut 400, and today just not able to get back above it. Sold this one as there's many other stocks that look and are acting much better. And last one here, a very low risk spot on this stock, CRISPR Therapeutics. You see the volume over the last few days. This is NTLA reported earnings, and that is right here. You'll see the volume and the gap up on this one here on the 5th, and that really boosted CRISPR. So just one to keep an eye out on. It's a very, very volatile, high beta, high risk stock, but it is setting up here back above these moving averages with some volume. One to keep an eye on. So that is going to wrap the show up, folks. Thank you for listening. As always, hope you enjoyed the show, and I will see you on Thursday's video as well as this weekend's podcast. Hope you all have a great week.